let it go. Can't hold it back anymore. Let it go. Turn away and slam the door. At least there's one video on YouTube of me actually singing that correctly.
Yes.
Welcome to StillerBros at the Movies, and welcome to our 100th episode.
We've been doing this over 100. We've done this over 100 times.
So 8 years ago, we got really into Smosh, and so the thing we wanted to do, and so we got this idea in our heads that we could rip off their show Lunchtime with Smosh, only we'd do it with movies. 6 years ago, we shot our first episode.
Yes. Did we know that there were already people? Did we know that there was already some people who were already doing this kind of concept? No. Was it a weird coincidence that the guy from CinemaSins basically ripped this concept off and then Screen Junkies ripped that concept off after that? A little bit.
I mean, it was like 2 months later after we had already made and uploaded the first episode, but it was obviously a coincidence because obviously they weren't going to watch our video.
And obviously the coincidences continued with the CinemaSins Screen Junkies. We're not going to talk about that because that was a whole can of worms.
And that was years ago. But here we are, 100 episodes later. And what have we learned? Quite a bit, actually. We went from not knowing anything, from just kind of being informed by just random movie reviews to actually having watched video essays and stuff on actual filmmaking to know just a little bit more about what we're talking about. We're not experts by any means. We don't claim to be, and we're not going around saying, hey, we know what we're doing here, but we at least know a bit more about filmmaking, and we have made educated guesses. And maybe a little bit of a little nice quippy joke here and there about the movies.
Yeah. But today, let's finally talk about the movie. And that is a movie that 6 years ago, nobody saw coming in a million years.
This was one of the biggest in-house movies that Disney ever made. I'm saying in-house because I'm not counting the Marvel movies, I'm not counting the Star Wars movies. This is a movie that eclipsed the entire sub-franchise that it was a part of to become the highest grossing animated movie of all time for 6 years.
And we say it's the biggest movie not because it's the highest grossing movie Disney ever made, because that got beat out earlier this year with Lion King, nor is it the highest grossing animated movie that they've ever made, because again, Lion King just kicked its ass. We're saying this because 6 years ago, out of almost nowhere, Frozen became the biggest phenomena on the planet.
For like 2 years after this movie came out, the place everywhere was filled with Frozen. Costumes, toys, short films, Broadway shows.
2014, we went to Disney World, and Anna and Elsa's wait times to go meet them were going up to like 4 hours.
This was insane, and so it was only inevitable that a sequel would come eventually. We just didn't think it would be 6 years later, with a lot more hype to build up on it.
Obviously, this is the last of the two. This is one of the last 2 movies that Disney's putting out this year that are basically guaranteed to make $1 billion.
Just basically proving that Disney's having a really great year.
Yeah.
So Frozen 2. The original Frozen was... So what were our thoughts on the original Frozen? Because we never ended up making an episode on that back when it came out. I really like Frozen. It's a fantastic movie. I could make a whole video essays about why I think it speaks particularly to me. This is not coming out straight. But I still think that there's a lot to be said about any subtext involving anxiety and just basically social awkwardness, particularly around the character of Elsa.
There's a lot to go off of, and there was a lot there, and it was a movie that going into the theater, I did not think I would enjoy nearly as much as I ended up enjoying as I walked out of the theater.
It subverts a lot of expectations as you're going into it. You go in. Before the movie came out, the trailers kind of marketed it as a regular animated movie, but then it subverted expectations, like the prince that was a villain, the whole meta commentary on Disney's quick little let's get married, I already met you and I love you things.
Even though they had already done that 6 years earlier with Enchanted.
The villain song that turned out to be the villain song that became the pop anthem of the year. The cartoon funny sidekick that was not only actually legitimately funny, but plot relevant.
All of it came together to make what is probably a lightning in a bottle, once in a lifetime movie. But now they're replicating it with Frozen 2. Everybody's back. We have Chris Buck and Jennifer Lee back returning as directors. We have Idina Menzel, Kristen Bell, Jonathan Groff, and Josh Gad all returning for their respective roles. And of course we have Kristen Anderson-Lopez and Robert Lopez coming back to write the songs. And boy, have the last 6 years for them gotten suddenly really busy.
So on top of everything else, these two composers who have been getting nothing but praise from most of the actors on the press junket have basically shown that they have some kind of that they are some of the most talented songwriters working right now when it comes to writing songs for these things. Like the original songs were known for being catchy all the way through. The kind of songs that get stuck in your head the second you leave the theater. And they've been working, and since working for Disney, they've been doing it a lot more. They also wrote "Remember Me" for Lord Coco 2 years ago, and now
they were working on Gigantic before that was unfortunately canceled. We'll see if that ends up going anywhere with Jennifer Lee as CCO of Disney Animation now.
Which that's another thing. Jennifer Lee went from being an in-demand writer for Disney to being the in-demand writer for Disney. After the basic 1-2 punch of Wreck-It Ralph and Frozen under her belt, she's basically become. It was a no-brainer to make her the CCO of Disney when it was time to do a little shuffling around due to circumstances that we won't go too deep into.
Yes.
And it led to fan theories and YouTube covers and all these other things. Frozen is a phenomenon, and making a sequel was just inevitable, and that's why Disney's been doing all kinds of things to remind you. They made 2 holiday specials, a short film, and a Broadway musical, all to basically be part of Disney's biggest animated project ever. It was one of the first Disney animated movies ever to gross $1 billion at the box office. And once again, it was the #1 animated movie of all time until The Lion King beat it like 3 months ago.
Yeah.
And so now Frozen 2. People were wondering for a long time, what could Frozen 2 possibly be? Frozen had left Frozen closed a lot of the doors as a one movie, but it also left a few questions open. Questions that were probably answered in the middle reader book novel series or anything else, or just basically go on fanfiction.net and read someone's personal fan theory come to life for what Frozen 2 would be if they wrote it.
But we have a lot of questions that they're going to be going through right now, like Elsa's powers and a lot of other stuff that we learn. We got new cast members: Sterling K. Brown, Evan Rachel Wood, Jason Ritter, Alfred Molina.
And it's all thrown in here, and it's already looking fantastic. The song I have kept away from spoilers as much as I possibly can, and I've only heard one song, and it's not even the version that's in the main movie. It's the movie. I've just heard the Panic at the Disco cover of Into the Unknown, and yeah, it's a Panic at the Disco song, but still,
yeah.
But it looks like the songs are going to be just as catchy as they were the first time around. The characters are. It seems like they're going for a completely different direction on this one. Whereas the first one was a straightforward Disney story with the occasional little meta nod at what the Disney mold of princess stories was. But this one looks to be kind of going for a more family-friendly action-adventure type deal.
The first trailer we saw, it was like a fantasy epic, and it just kind of blew us away.
Especially since for the longest time, they didn't even put a single note of one of the actual songs from this movie in the trailers.
And they still kind of haven't.
It was all for the main trailers. All are revolving around a rearranged version of Wilhelm, how the opening song for the opening score piece from the first movie.
And they're playing it really close to the vest with a lot of the stuff in this movie.
I mean, for the longest time, when they were putting toys out for this, they were putting out karaoke machines without any of the songs actually loaded on.
Yeah.
That's how undercovers this whole thing is. And once the toys came out, it does play the songs, but it doesn't play anything where the lyrics are plot relevant.
Yeah.
Like, once again, I've been avoiding spoilers like the plague. Do you know how hard it is to pass the read-aloud children's book at Target and not be tempted to look at it? Actually, it's really easy.
Yeah. However, especially since my incentive always with Spencer with spoilers is you look at it, you touch it, I break your hands.
So, Frozen 2. Are we going to like it? I think so. The animation still looks beautiful. The songs it's got the exact same songwriting team, directing team, a lot of the same voice actors. A new co-writer, though this co-writer did write a movie we like, Christopher Robin from last year.
Yeah. But we'll see. It's very interesting. We didn't even 100% know if we would like how much we would like the first Frozen when we went in to go see it.
I mean, when we went to go see it the first time, all I had to go off of was the fact that I had heard Let It Go on a YouTube video, and it got stuck in my head for so much that I'm like, all right, I need to see this movie. And I did. And I liked it so much.
So we're going to go, and we'll see you guys after our 100th jump. Bye.
So, yeah, that was pretty great.
Yeah, it was. And it was freaking freezing outside. Pretty fitting.
So, yeah. I love that movie. I don't know if it's as good as the original, but I certainly felt more emotional than I did in the original.
I was like emotional from the beginning because just seeing these characters together again, I was like, oh my god, they're back.
Nostalgia for 6 years ago. Disney has managed to do that kind of thing.
Yeah. But let's get into it a little bit. Chris Buck and Jennifer Lee did an amazing job directing it. The animation on this movie is just beautiful.
There's a scene with trees in it where it's like, okay, they just filmed real trees and then edited them in, right? Because there's no way that a bunch of artists managed to make that look that realistic. But the technology's there. As we've pointed out multiple times through most of the animated movies we've reviewed over the course of this series.
We also have probably such a beautiful sequence with involving Elsa for the song "Show Yourself," which is the best song in the movie by far.
Oh yeah, it's incredible. It's incredible. It's catchy. And it's the most emotional scene in the movie.
Yeah.
And Kristoff finally gets his own solo number.
Boys to Sven, as I like to call it.
It's one of the funniest things in the movie. And it's one of the funniest things in the movie because if you watch enough 80s music videos, you can see every single reference that they threw in there.
It's basically just that Family Guy. It's basically just kind of that Family Guy bit of Stewie of Stewie singing the Bryan Adams song.
And all these 80s music videos are laid over each other to make one completely inconsequential narrative. But that is funny. Unfortunately, because we were in a theater full of kids, there was more laughter at Olaf's song when I'm older.
There was some kids in the row behind us who were really digging Olaf.
Yeah, we're not knocking it because Olaf is still pretty funny for Honey.
But there's just a lot of kids. But I think that kids find. But I think that Olaf was used a lot more for like little kid humor than he was in the first movie, and it feels like taking Olaf out would probably take a lot of the little kids' attentions away from the movie itself.
So it's probably a good call to leave him in, but maybe cut him back a bit. But maybe pull him back a little bit. I don't know. I like Josh Gad fine enough, but if he can turn something that's funny, he can turn certain things like some scenes in Pixels a little bit more watchable, but I don't know. Olaf, but I don't know. I still like Olaf in this, and he's had Josh Gad turned in a pretty good performance as him.
The story is very... a little predictable at times. obviously very complex for what they were going for.
It's an epic, but I think that's why they did that. It's an epic. It's big. It's sprawling. It fills in these gaps in the lore that we didn't know we needed to fill in, and it's got all these new and it adds this new dimension to the original Frozen that we didn't think was going to be there, because Frozen was originally written as kind of a one and done princess story, and now it's a big epic. And the second movie turned it into this big epic fantasy adventure.
And now we kind of got, and you can kind of tell that they maybe took a little bit from Once Upon a Time.
Yeah, because there's a slight bit, not going to go into it because spoilers, but there's a slight bit that kind of was exactly what they did when they made this when they did something similar to this for the Frozen arc in the first half of season 4 of the show Once Upon a Time. It's not exactly the same, obviously, because they've got a lot more to work with. They actually have a better grasp on what who these characters are than just us. They saw the movie, they liked it, and so they wrote a whole a half TV season around it. The story is really good for what it is, because it's this big epic that once again fills in gaps in the lore that we didn't realize were in there, and now the whole sections of the movie, and now the two movies are basically two halves of a whole story now.
Yeah, and again, while predictable, there are some times when it does come and take the ideas that a lot of people would have and flip them on their heads, like the original did. Like, there's certain characters where it feels like they were going in one direction, but then they just completely pull but then they just like take it in a direction you didn't quite see coming.
I mean, there was a character who I was so sure from all the promotions and the fact that they were there, that I thought was going to be the villain.
Yeah, there was a character that's a scream that it's kind of seemed at one point was screaming at the audience, "I'm the villain, watch how bad I'm going to be when we get to the third act."
But then it turned around and it was revealed that this person was actually just wasn't. And I don't know, maybe we were getting the wrong vibe from him. Maybe the promotions just showed them a little too aggressive. It showed that they were being a little too aggressive in the scenes because they needed to show some action-heavy stuff. But yeah, that's the kind of thing that was going on.
Yeah, because there's not exactly a villain per se in this movie.
The situation is the villain. This is a man versus me. This is a hero versus nature kind of story, where the situation is more the conflict is more what they're trying to fight.
Yeah, and there's obviously a lot of heart with the arc of the sisters, and with Kristoff's subplot, which, yeah, is pretty corny.
It's pretty much the kind of thing you probably knew was going to happen when they announced Frozen 2. Like, this is the subplot. Most people would probably predict. So, but yeah, there's a couple things that are telegraphed. Some stuff isn't said explicit. Isn't really said explicitly, but thanks to the fact that we know certain elements like how long it's been since the first Frozen, we know it kind of sets up where we're going to go with it.
Yeah. So maybe there's something there for to get a third movie out of this.
Maybe, I don't know. That's up to the story trust at Disney. If they can come, obviously their whole point with making a Frozen 2 was they weren't going to do this unless they had an actually good idea, and they seemed to have a good idea, and it seems like they had a good idea. They had a great idea.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that there's a new fantasy element. I love the fact that they challenged themselves by going in a completely different direction from the first one, but also being very clearly in the same universe with the same characters, with the same kind of tone in some areas.
And that we kind of left the safety of what was Frozen 1, where we now have this big, sprawling section, where it just seems bigger than Frozen, where it should... Now, having just seen Frozen 2 and thinking about Frozen 1, seems very small, so much smaller than in this movie.
What else? The Lopez's music, as we were kind of going piece by piece, still fantastic, still catchy. And the fact that there are now 3 soundtrack versions of songs on the songs from the movie is just kind of great, because we got like Panic at the Disco, Casey Musgraves, and Weezer in their interpretations on these songs.
Yeah.
Christoph Beck's score. I love the fact that I can hear little pieces of the original score from the first movie along with the new who score. And for the record, the soundtrack to the first movie was one of the movie. I was working in early mornings around the time that the first Frozen came out. So when I bought the soundtrack and loaded it onto my iPod, that was mainly one of the like 3 albums that I would listen to constantly while I was at work.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of thing. I even listen to the score, and I never tend to listen to score on its own.
Yeah. And obviously, it's great to see these characters and to get all these characters back. Do we need a third one? I don't know. Again, it's up to them. If they can come up with a story that would make a third one,
they'll make a third one that could maybe close out a trilogy, or make room for another one. I don't know. I love the story. I love these characters. I love the fact that we got a second one, and I just can't wait to watch this again and again and again. This is a great movie. I loved it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's going to win the Oscar for animated movie again. Here's me predicting again. Like the last time I sat through a Disney movie and predicted that it was going to win the Oscar.
Well, we'll see what happens, because it is up against Toy Story 4, which I think I liked a little bit better.
We'll see.
I don't know. I haven't watched Toy Story 4 again in a while, so.
But we don't even know, because the nominations aren't going to come out for a couple more months. But
yeah.
Frozen 2. You're probably going to see it, but see it anyway.
Yeah.
It's great. It's fantastic. There's so much more to this story. There's so much more we could talk about, but we have such limited time, because we just basically put this down to how long we can get from here to the theater every single time.
Yeah.
So, yeah. It's fantastic. Disney does it again. The Renaissance is not going away anytime soon, which is good, because normally highly anticipated sequels like this are the kind of things that kill Disney Renaissance.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I think that's all we have to say.
Yeah.
All right, then. So, be sure to like, favorite, subscribe. Thank you for 100 episodes of the show.
To anybody who has actually been watching this show.
Thank you for sticking with us, just sitting in a car talking about movies, because that's one of the things we love to do in our free time. So we thought, hey, let's do it. Hey, let's see if we can get someone to actually listen. So be sure to tune in next time for episode 101, when eat shit. Oh, you definitely eat shit. Bye.
Bye.